The arrival of the proud warrior. The Ziran Empire was known across the stars for its warriors, elite, strong, and unmatched in battle. Among them was Commander Vilara, one of the finest. She had trained in countless environments, from the crushing gravity of high-mass planets to the zero-G combat of deep space. She had defeated enemies twice her size and broken records in hand-to-hand combat. Now she stood on the edge of her ship's landing ramp, her arms crossed over her armored chest, looking down at the blue planet below with a smirk. Earth. The humans were weaker, shorter-lived, and fragile compared to Zirans. Their world had lower gravity than Ziran homeworlds, which meant moving here would be effortless. She imagined herself leaping across the battlefield, striking down human warriors like they were children. A Ziran diplomat stepped forward, adjusting his translator. "Commander, be cautious. This planet may seem easy to navigate, but—" "I do not need warnings," Vilara interrupted, her voice sharp. "I have fought on over 20 different worlds. I have trained in every possible condition. Earth will be no different." The diplomat sighed but said nothing. The ramp descended, touching the ground with a metallic hiss. Vilara stepped forward, ready to prove her superiority to the watching humans. The humans watch. A group of human soldiers and scientists stood nearby, watching her arrival with curiosity. Some whispered to each other. Others observed with quiet amusement. Among them was Sergeant Daniel Miller, a well-built man with a confident smirk. He had read about Zirans, tall, powerful, and arrogant. They always underestimated humans, and this one looked no different. He nudged his fellow soldier. "Think she's gonna show off?" His friend chuckled. "Definitely. They always do." Vilara descended the ramp and took her first step onto Earth's soil. She expected to feel lighter, faster, stronger, but the moment her foot touched the ground, something felt wrong. Her muscles tensed in an odd way, her balance shifted strangely, and for the first time in years, she felt a hint of instability. She took another step. Her knees buckled. A third step. Her body wobbled. She clenched her jaw. "No, this is impossible." She tried to correct herself, to adjust her stance, but before she could react, her legs gave out. Thud. The mighty Ziran warrior crashed to the ground, landing face first in the dirt. The fall of a warrior. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, laughter. The humans couldn't help themselves. Some tried to cover their mouths, others simply stared in shock. But Miller let out a full laugh. "Oh wow," he said, shaking his head. "Didn't see that coming." Vilara's face burned. Anger, shame, and confusion rushed through her like fire. She had trained in high gravity, low gravity, and even artificial fields, so why did her body feel so weak here? She pressed her hands to the ground, trying to push herself up. Her arms trembled. Her legs refused to cooperate. It felt as if her entire body had betrayed her. A human scientist, Dr. Carter, stepped forward with an amused expression. "Ah, classic mistake." Vilara shot him a glare. "What? Mistake?" she growled. Dr. Carter adjusted his glasses. "You thought Earth's gravity was weak, but it's not that simple." Miller crossed his arms, smirking. "Welcome to Earth, warrior. Hope you like the dirt." Vilara gritted her teeth. She had come here to show her superiority. Instead, she had been humiliated in front of everyone. She swore to herself, this would not happen again. The humiliating struggle. Vilara lay on the ground, her hands gripping the soil beneath her. It felt foreign, strange, not just because it was Earth's dirt, but because she had never been this low before. The laughter of the humans echoed around her, sharp and mocking. She could feel their amusement, their curiosity, and worst of all, their pity. She would not tolerate this. With a growl, she pushed herself up onto her arms, her muscles trembling as she tried to lift her body. The moment she did, her arms buckled, and she collapsed again. Her breathing was heavy, her body refusing to obey. Her fingers dug into the ground as she clenched her fists. This was not weakness. This was not failure. This was just unexpected. But the humans, they weren't taking this seriously. Sergeant Miller squatted down beside her, resting his arms on his knees. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice dripping with amusement. Vilera's eyes burned with fury. She was a Zyran commander. She had bested warriors twice her size, led battles against impossible odds, and yet here she was, mocked by a human soldier. She refused to accept this. "I do not need assistance," she snarled, forcing herself to roll onto her side. Miller raised an eyebrow. "Sure about that? 'Cause it kinda looks like you need all the help you can get." Another soldier muttered, "Guess she's not as strong as she thought." Vilera's sharp hearing caught that remark, and her pride boiled over. With sheer willpower, she gritted her teeth and pushed up again, this time managing to rise onto her knees. The effort made her entire body shake. She could feel every movement like she was dragging an enormous weight. Every instinct told her she should be lighter in Earth's gravity, faster, more agile. But instead, it felt like something was pressing down on her, sinking into her bones. She fought against it. She had never lost. She would not lose now. With a sharp inhale, she planted one foot forward and pushed herself up. The moment she reached her full height, she tipped forward and fell flat on her face. A warrior's pride in pieces. The second crash was somehow worse than the first. The laughter came again, though this time, some humans were whispering, exchanging confused glances. "Is she really that weak? I thought Zyrans were supposed to be stronger than us. Maybe something's wrong with her suit." Vilera heard every word, and it only made her more determined. She forced herself up once more, her body protesting every motion. Her legs felt like they were wrapped in lead, her reflexes lagged behind her thoughts, and even the simple act of breathing felt heavier than it should. This wasn't normal. She was a Zyran warrior, built for endurance, speed, and battle. Her body was conditioned to perform in any environment. But Earth was breaking her. Her arms shook as she got onto her knees again, her breath ragged. Dr. Carter, the scientist, had been watching closely. He stepped forward, holding a small data tablet, his face thoughtful. "Commander, I think you're experiencing something we call adaptive shock." Vilera shot him a glare. "I have fought in zero gravity, high gravity, and shifting environments. I do not experience shock." Carter tapped his screen. "Actually, you do. Everyone does. But your species experiences it differently than humans." Miller smirked. Translation: "You're not weak. You're just not used to playing by our rules." Vilera clenched her jaw. "Earth's gravity isn't the problem," Carter continued. "It's how your muscle memory interacts with it." He turned the screen toward her, showing a holographic display of a Zyran body. "Your kind is trained for dynamic gravity shifts. Your muscle reflexes automatically compensate when environments change." He looked at her with a knowing expression. "But Earth's gravity doesn't shift. It's constant, heavy, and unforgiving. So your body is trying to compensate for a change that isn't happening." Vilera understood immediately. Her mind assumed she should feel lighter. Her instincts expected her movements to be faster. But instead, her body overcompensated, misjudging every step, throwing off her balance, her speed, and even her strength. A cruel trick of biology. And the humans had known. Rage, shame, and the fire to fight. The realization sent a wave of anger through her. She had walked into this situation blind, thinking Earth was nothing but a lesser world. She had mocked its gravity, mocked its people, and now she was lying in its dirt like a helpless fool. Her pride ached. But more than that, she hated how Miller looked at her. Not with pity, not with cruelty, but with expectation. Like he was waiting for something. Vilera forced her body up again, moving slowly, feeling the weight of the world press down on her. She refused to let this be her defeat. She was a Zyran warrior. She had fought on battlefields filled with blood, stood against enemies who towered over her, and never once backed down. She wouldn't start now. With one last effort, she stood up, shaking, unsteady, but standing. Miller gave a slow, approving nod. Not bad. Valera exhaled sharply. This is not over, she growled. Miller grinned. Didn't think it was. As she steadied herself, she knew one thing for certain. This was now personal. She would master Earth's gravity. She would train harder than ever before. And she would prove to these humans that she was still the strongest warrior in the galaxy. No matter how long it took. The hidden truth about Earth's gravity. Valera stood at last, her body trembling, her breath ragged. The world around her felt wrong. Every movement heavier, every step clumsier than she had ever experienced before. Her pride was already bruised, but worse than that was the unspoken challenge in the eyes of the humans. She was supposed to be stronger than them, faster, more capable. But Earth itself was rejecting her. Dr. Carter watched her with quiet interest, still holding his data tablet, while Sergeant Miller stood with his arms crossed, a smug smirk playing on his lips. Valera gritted her teeth. She would not be looked down upon. This is temporary, she declared, her voice edged with frustration. I will adapt. Carter nodded, his expression unreadable. I don't doubt it. But do you even understand what you're up against? She stiffened. Earth's gravity is weaker than Zuran Prime's. It should be easy to move. Carter chuckled. You keep saying that, but you're making a pretty basic mistake. Valera's sharp eyes narrowed. And what mistake is that? Miller stepped forward, rubbing his chin in mock thought. Lem guessed. You're assuming that because gravity here is lower, it's gonna work like the simulations on your ships. Valera clenched her jaw. That was exactly what she had assumed. The human soldier grinned. Yeah, that's not how this works. A silent battlefield of science. Dr. Carter adjusted his glasses and motioned toward a small holographic display on his tablet. It projected a 3D model of a humanoid figure with a glowing blue outline, lines of data flickering across its limbs. Your body was trained under conditions where gravity fluctuates, meaning your muscles have developed an adaptive response system. Valera scowled. Yes, we are superior because of it. Carter smirked. Oh, then why are you struggling to walk? Valera's fingers tensed. She did not like this human's tone. He tapped the screen, zooming in on the figure's legs and core muscles. Here's what's happening. When Zurans move in variable gravity, your muscles automatically shift tension to compensate for the sudden changes. It's why you can move so well in zero gravity, why you can fight in shifting environments without losing balance. The projection changed, highlighting a second figure, this time a human body. Unlike the Zuran model, this one had denser muscle structures around key areas. But humans, Carter continued, we don't adapt like that. We don't have built-in compensations for sudden gravity changes. Instead, our bodies develop one thing over time: resistance. Valera's eyes narrowed. Resistance. Miller rolled his shoulders, as if proving the point. Yeah, you know, raw endurance, strength that builds over years of training under one unchanging force. Valera stared at the human projection. The structure was different. The balance of muscle, the way it was designed for static gravity rather than dynamic shifts. It was nothing like a Zuran. Dr. Carter continued, his voice calm but pointed. See, you've spent your entire life relying on your muscles to adjust on their own. You're used to them doing the work for you. But on Earth, he tilted his head. There's nothing to adjust for. Gravity doesn't change. It's just there. Constant. Unforgiving. He tapped his screen again, and the projection zoomed in on a Zuran muscle comparison. That means your body is fighting itself. It keeps trying to compensate, trying to find the change that doesn't exist. And every time it does, your muscles waste energy, overcorrect, and collapse under their own tension. The realization hit her like a warship cannon. She wasn't weak. She wasn't untrained. Her body was betraying her. The weight of Earth's truth. A cold frustration settled in her chest. She had spent years perfecting her combat skills, developing her endurance in grueling training regimens, and pushing herself past limits that would have killed lesser warriors. But here, none of it mattered. The humans, these smaller, shorter-lived beings, had built entire civilizations under a force her kind had never truly experienced. They had grown stronger not by adapting, but by enduring. And she was being torn apart by the very thing she thought would make her stronger. The human soldiers had stopped laughing. Some still smirked, but others now watched her with a new kind of interest. Not as a joke, but as a challenger. Miller crossed his arms. "So, warrior princess, what's the plan? You gonna stand there looking angry, or are you gonna do something about it?" Villera's breath was slow, controlled. Her hands tightened into fists. The answer was obvious. The challenge accepted. "I will train," she said, her voice steady and cold. "I will master this." Miller grinned. "Good, because if you want to survive on Earth, you're gonna have to earn it." Villera straightened, ignoring the pain in her muscles, the humiliation still burning in her mind. A new challenge had been set before her, and she would not walk away from it, even if it broke her first. The human warrior's challenge. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the training field. The cool air was crisp against Villera's heated skin, but she barely noticed. Her mind was focused, her muscles still aching from the battle against Earth's relentless gravity. She stood tall, or at least as tall as her exhausted body would allow. The humans surrounded her, some watching with amusement, others with cautious respect. But one stood in front of her, arms crossed, his stance confident. Sergeant Daniel Miller, a human soldier, one of Earth's elite. He wasn't the tallest among them, nor the most physically imposing, but there was something in his stance, the way he moved, a sense of control, discipline, and a kind of quiet power she couldn't quite place. He smirked. "All right, alien warrior. You want to prove yourself. Then prove it." Villera narrowed her eyes. "Name the challenge." Miller cracked his knuckles. "Simple. You beat me in a test of strength, and I'll acknowledge you as the superior warrior. You lose. You listen to my orders for the rest of your training." The Ziran warrior scoffed. "I do not take orders from humans." Miller raised an eyebrow. "Then don't lose." The challenge was clear. Villera stepped forward, muscles screaming in protest, but she forced herself to ignore the pain. "What is the test?" Miller motioned toward a heavy metal crate, a storage unit for field supplies. The thing was massive, easily weighing more than 2 human soldiers combined. "You lift this," he said, stepping up to it. "Easy, right?" Villera rolled her shoulders, already confident. She had lifted twice this weight in Ziran training simulations. "This is pathetic." She walked up to the crate, planting her feet. With a deep breath, she gripped the edges and pulled. And nothing happened. A flicker of confusion passed over her face. She adjusted her stance, gritted her teeth, and pulled harder. The crate moved. Barely. Her muscles burned. Her arms trembled. This wasn't right. She had tossed heavier weights in zero-G combat training. She let out a low growl, summoning every ounce of strength. And finally, the crate lifted an inch off the ground. But the effort felt impossible. She barely managed to hold it for 2 seconds before it slipped from her grasp, crashing back down. Miller let out a low whistle. Yikes. That was painful to watch. Villera spun on him, fists clenched. "This gravity, it is unnatural." Miller smirked, then stepped up to the crate. Without hesitation, he gripped the same edges and lifted. Effortlessly. Villera's eyes widened in disbelief as the human soldier hoisted the crate up to his chest, held it for a moment, and then set it down with a dull thud. His movements were smooth, controlled, as if the weight meant nothing to him. He dusted off his hands. Not so easy, huh? Strength is more than muscle. Villara's pride boiled. How? How could a human, with weaker muscles, lift something that she had barely managed to move? Carter, the scientist, spoke from the sidelines. You're still thinking of this the wrong way. It's not just about muscle. It's about how your body was trained. Villara shot him a glare. Explain. Carter walked over, holding up his holographic display again. You Zirans rely on a burst system. Short, explosive strength that works in variable gravity. It makes you dangerous in combat, but inefficient in steady, sustained force. He pointed at Miller. Humans, on the other hand, we train under one gravity our whole lives. That means our strength is built for constant resistance. Our muscles don't just generate power, they're conditioned to sustain it. That's why lifting something in Earth's gravity is harder for you than for us. Miller rolled his shoulders. So, warrior princess, you've got two options. Villara's fists clenched. And what are they? Miller held up a single finger. 1. You keep fighting against your own body and get nowhere. Then he held up a second. 2. You let me train you. The human way. The Ziran warrior's eyes flashed with anger. You think I will submit to your methods? Miller smirked. I think you already lost. So it's not about submitting. It's about learning. Villara's body ached. She hated this, hated the humiliation, hated the way these humans looked at her. But more than anything, she hated that they were right. For the first time in her life, she was facing an enemy she couldn't defeat with brute strength alone. And if she was to conquer Earth's gravity, she would need to learn from the very people she had mocked. Her pride fought against the thought. But she was a warrior. And a warrior's duty was to become stronger. She let out a slow breath. Very well. Train me. Miller grinned. Glad you finally came around. He turned to the other soldiers. All right, boys. Get ready. We've got an alien warrior to break in. The humans cheered. And Villara, despite herself, felt the fire of battle reignite within her. She would not be defeated. Not by Earth. And definitely not by these humans. The relentless training begins. The sun had barely begun to rise, casting a dim glow over the Earth's training field. The air was cold, crisp, carrying the scent of damp soil and metal. A few human soldiers were already awake, stretching, preparing for the brutal day ahead. And in the middle of the training ground stood Commander Villara, struggling to stay on her feet. Her muscles screamed in protest, her body still fighting against Earth's gravity, but she refused to fall again. She would not be humiliated. She would adapt. She had chosen to accept Sergeant Miller's training, though every fiber of her being rebelled against the idea of being taught by a human. And yet, here she was, standing at the edge of a battlefield where her greatest enemy was not a warrior, not a weapon, but gravity itself. The first trial, breaking the Ziran's instincts. Miller stood before her, arms crossed, the usual smirk playing on his lips. All right, princess, he said, pacing in front of her. Time to see if you can actually learn something. First rule of Earth training. Forget everything you know about movement. Villara narrowed her eyes. I have spent my entire life mastering movement. Miller snorted. Yeah. And how's that working out for you? Villara gritted her teeth. She hated his smugness. But worse than that, she hated that he was right. Miller walked around her like a predator circling prey. The problem is simple. You think you're in control, but your body is fighting itself. Your instincts are telling you to move like you're in a shifting gravity field. That's why you're overcompensating every step. Villara inhaled deeply, forcing herself to listen. Right now, your body expects to compensate for a gravitational shift that never comes. Miller continued. So you keep wasting energy trying to adjust, and that's why you crash like a sack of bricks. She hated this explanation, but she couldn't argue with it. Miller stepped back and crossed his arms. So here's your first lesson. Stop thinking. Valera frowned. That is absurd. Miller chuckled. Maybe to you, but right now, thinking is what's making you weak. He pointed to a small stack of weighted training vests. Put one of those on. Valera arched an eyebrow. I am already struggling with your gravity. You wish to add weight. Miller grinned. Oh yeah, because right now, you're still too light. A Zirin under Earth's weight. She hesitated only a moment before picking up the vest. It was dense, heavier than expected, clearly designed to push a human body to its limit. She fastened it over her uniform, immediately feeling the difference. The extra weight pulled her downward, making each breath harder, making her legs tremble under the pressure. Miller clapped his hands. Good. Now run. Valera blinked. Run. You heard me. Full lap around the field. Valera clenched her jaw. She could not refuse. She had already swallowed her pride by agreeing to this training. There was no turning back now. She took her first step forward. The impact slammed through her legs like a shockwave. She staggered but forced herself onward. The next step was worse. Each footfall felt like her legs were made of lead. The weight dragged her down, her muscles burning with an intensity she had never known before. The humans were watching, some whispering, others amused. That angered her. She pushed harder. She forced her body forward, step by agonizing step. Halfway through the field, her lungs burned and her vision blurred from exhaustion. But she would not fall. Not again. By the time she reached the finish line, she collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. Miller stood over her. Not bad for a first try, but we're just getting started. Valera glared up at him. The fire in her eyes had only grown. The second trial, the human test of strength. Miller led her to another metal crate, similar to the one she had struggled to lift before. This again, she growled. Nope, Miller said, grabbing a large sledgehammer from a weapons rack. He tossed it to her. She caught it, nearly dropping it from the unexpected weight. Miller grinned. You're gonna hit that crate, over and over, until I tell you to stop. Valera looked at him as if he had gone mad. This is no training. This is a waste of time. Miller tilted his head. You sure? You're struggling to hold that hammer. Imagine what's gonna happen when you start swinging it. She hated that he was making sense. With a deep breath, she raised the hammer and brought it down. The shock traveled up her arms, nearly making her drop it. The impact was nothing like what she expected. It felt like her own strength was rebounding against her. She growled and swung again. And again. And again. Her muscles screamed in protest, her arms shaking with every strike. But she refused to stop. Miller nodded approvingly. Good. Keep going. Breaking the barrier. Valera swung the hammer for what felt like an eternity. Sweat dripped down her brow. Her vision blurred. Her arms burned with pain she had never experienced before. Her mind screamed at her to stop, but she wouldn't. Because something was happening. With each swing, she felt her body adapting. The pain became familiar. Her muscles adjusted. Her balance improved. Her footwork steadied. She was learning. And when she finally collapsed, gasping for air, she realized something. For the first time since she had set foot on Earth, she felt in control. Miller stood over her, arms crossed. Now you're getting it. Valera stared up at him. Her body was wrecked, her pride still healing. But something else burned within her now. Determination. This wasn't just about strength. This was about mastering herself in a way she never had before. And for the first time, she understood. Humans were not strong because of their muscles. They were strong because they endured. And she would endure too, no matter how long it took. The warrior adapts. The night sky stretched above the Earth's training grounds, stars shimmering like distant watchers, bearing witness to a struggle unfolding beneath them. The humans had long since finished their exercises, some retreating to their quarters, others laughing and sharing stories around the barracks. But Commander Vilara was still on the field. Her muscles ached, her breath came in ragged gasps, and her arms trembled with every motion. The weight vest still clung to her body, making every movement a battle. She should have stopped hours ago. Yet she didn't, because for the first time since stepping onto this forsaken planet, she had felt something change. The relentless pain, the crushing exhaustion, the humiliation of struggling against Earth's gravity, it had stopped being her enemy. Now, it was her teacher, the awakening of strength. She picked up the sledgehammer again, gripping the worn handle tightly. The night air was cool against her sweat-drenched skin. This was her 100th swing. The first 10 had nearly broken her. The next 20 had sent shockwaves of agony through her muscles. By the 50th, she had stopped feeling her arms. But now, at 100, her body had stopped resisting. Her mind had stopped doubting. Vilara let out a slow breath, tightening her grip. One last swing. She raised the hammer high above her head and brought it down with everything she had. Crash. The crate splintered, metal denting inward. The vibration traveled through her arms, but instead of pain, she felt power. She didn't drop the hammer this time. She didn't collapse. She was still standing. And she smiled. Not because she had won. No, the battle was far from over. But because, for the first time, she felt like she could win. The challenge of combat. A slow clap echoed through the field. Vilara turned, still breathing heavily, as Sergeant Miller stepped out of the shadows, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. Well, well, he mused, walking toward her. Didn't think you had it in you. Vilara wiped the sweat from her brow. I am Ziran. We do not break. Miller raised an eyebrow. Yeah, you sure about that? He suddenly lunged forward. Vilara barely had time to react. Her instincts kicked in, muscles shifting for an attack. But Earth's gravity was still working against her, and her movements were slower than she expected. Miller's foot swept beneath her legs, and before she could counter, she hit the ground. Hard. Her back slammed into the dirt, and the impact sent a dull shock through her body. Miller grinned down at her. Yup. Still breaking. Vilara growled, rolling to her feet, but Miller was already backing up, hands raised. Relax, princess, he chuckled. That wasn't an attack. That was a lesson. Vilara huffed in frustration, dusting herself off. Then teach me properly. Miller's smirk widened. Gladly. Adapting to the human way. Miller motioned for her to follow. Your biggest problem isn't strength. It's not even speed. Vilara raised an eyebrow. Then what is it? Miller tapped the side of his head. Timing. She frowned. I do not lack coordination. You do, Miller said bluntly. But not in the way you think. Your body is trained for a completely different kind of fighting. Zirans are built for sudden shifts in combat. He raised a fist. Your people rely on quick bursts, expecting the battlefield to change constantly. But humans, we grind through fights. We're trained to take hits, to keep moving, to adjust within the same constant gravity. Vilara exhaled sharply. Then show me. Miller's grin widened. All right. Let's start simple. Try to hit me. Vilara didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, aiming for his torso. But Miller was already sidestepping, her punch missing by an inch. Too slow, he taunted. She turned, swinging again. This time, she aimed lower, trying to anticipate his movement. Miller ducked and landed a light jab to her ribs. It wasn't enough to hurt, but it stung her pride. She snarled and swung once more, faster this time. Miller leaned back, avoiding it with ease. Still too slow. Vilara's breath came faster. Her mind raced. This is not a fight. This is a lesson. And if she wanted to win, she needed to learn. She closed her eyes for just a second, recalling every lesson she had been forced to accept on this planet. Gravity was constant. Strength meant endurance. Timing was everything. She exhaled. Then, without warning, she moved differently. She didn't lunge. She didn't charge. She let Miller take the first step. And when he did, she reacted. Miller moved to sidestep, expecting another straightforward attack. But Villara anticipated his movement. She shifted her weight mid-step, adjusting her balance, and threw a strike where he would be, not where he was. Miller's eyes widened. Cry cake. Her fist connected with his ribs. Not a hard hit, not a devastating blow, but a clean, precise strike. Miller stumbled back, blinking in surprise. For the first time since they started, he wasn't smirking. A slow grin spread across Villara's face. Still think I'm too slow. Miller rubbed his side, chuckling. Not bad, princess. Not bad at all. He stepped back into a fighting stance. Now let's see if you can do it again. The warrior becomes the student. They train through the night. Villara adapted. She learned to read movement, not just react. She learned to control her balance, to fight without overcompensating. She fell, over and over. She got back up, every time. And for the first time, she understood the human way of fighting. Not through brute force, not through adaptation alone, but through endurance, through persistence, through never backing down, even when the battle seemed unwinnable. And as the sun began to rise, casting its golden light over the training grounds, she stood taller than ever. She was still Ziran, but now, she was learning what it meant to be human, and she was loving every second of it. A newfound respect. The morning sun cast golden streaks across the Earth's training field, marking the beginning of a new day. Yet for Commander Villara, the night had never ended. She stood in the center of the field, muscles aching, sweat dripping from her brow, her breathing steady but exhausted. Around her, the human soldiers were waking, gathering near the edge of the field to witness what had become the most unexpected spectacle of their careers. The proud Ziran warrior, once mocked for collapsing under Earth's gravity, was still standing. Sergeant Daniel Miller, her human instructor and self-proclaimed tormentor, stood across from her, rolling his shoulders, stretching out his limbs. His smirk was gone now, replaced by something more serious, more focused. Villara had changed. She was no longer just enduring Earth's gravity. She was fighting within it. And today, she would prove just how far she had come. The final challenge. A true test of strength. Miller cracked his knuckles and took a step forward. "All right, warrior princess," he said, his voice holding a note of respect. One final test. Villara's golden eyes flashed. She had expected this. She had been waiting for this. A fight, she stated, already settling into a battle stance. Miller grinned. A fight. The gathered soldiers murmured with excitement. They had witnessed Villara's journey, her struggles, her humiliations, her refusal to surrender. And now, they wanted to see if she could truly stand on equal footing with a human fighter. The standoff. Strength versus endurance. The two warriors circled each other. Villara no longer charged blindly like before. She had learned. She watched Miller's stance, his posture, his breathing. Miller, in turn, did the same. They had fought before, but this time, it was different. This was not a lesson. This was a battle between equals. Miller made the first move, a quick jab, testing her reflexes. Villara dodged, not wildly, not overcompensating, but with precision. She felt the shift in her body, but she adjusted, staying balanced, staying grounded. She countered with a low sweep, aiming to break his footing. Miller anticipated it, hopping back just in time. A faint grin flickered across his face. "You're learning," he admitted. Villara didn't waste breath on a response. She attacked. A rapid series of strikes, not just brute force, but controlled, strategic movements. Her fists moved like a storm, and for the first time, Miller was on the defensive. He blocked, dodged, countered when he could, but she wasn't the same fighter he had faced before. She was faster, more precise. adapted, and for the first time in his career he realized she might actually beat him. The turning point. The warrior's evolution. Miller pivoted, trying to land a decisive counterblow, but Villara saw it coming. She shifted, moved with the attack instead of against it, absorbing the force rather than resisting it. It was a technique she had stolen from the humans. And it worked. She twisted, delivered a sharp strike to Miller's ribs. Not hard enough to break anything, but enough to stagger him. The crowd gasped. Villara took advantage of the opening, stepping forward to deliver the finishing move. But Miller recovered too fast. With a grin, he grabbed her wrist mid-strike and twisted. Villara's instincts kicked in instantly. She spun with the motion, not against it, something she never would have done before. Her movements flowed seamlessly now, no longer burdened by her old habits. And when she landed on her feet, steady and strong, the entire field fell into stunned silence. A moment of realization. Miller exhaled, lowering his hands. Villara stood before him, chest rising and falling, but her body no longer trembled. She wasn't struggling against Earth's gravity anymore. She had become part of it. A slow, approving smile spread across Miller's face. "You win," he admitted. The soldiers watching erupted into cheers. But Villara wasn't listening to them. She wasn't thinking about victory or defeat. She was thinking about what she had just done. She had not just fought like a Zeran. She had fought like a human. And she had enjoyed it. The final acknowledgement. Miller extended his hand toward her. It was a human gesture, a sign of respect between warriors. For a moment, Villara hesitated. This was the same man who had laughed when she fell. The same one who had mocked her struggles. But he was also the same man who had taught her, challenged her, forced her to grow. And now, standing before her, he was offering her something no Zeran had ever given her before, a place among equals. She slowly reached out, gripping his hand firmly. The cheers around them grew louder. Villara's lips curled into a rare, genuine smile. Miller leaned in, grinning. "Welcome to Earth, warrior." She squeezed his hand a little harder. "Thank you, human." And with that, the Zoran warrior who once mocked Earth's gravity had conquered it. Not with brute force, not with technology, but with determination, adaptation, and the strength of an unbreakable will. And for the first time she knew, she would never see humans as weak again.